Hello, my name is Mark R. LePage. Welcome to this special session of EntreArchitect Live here in the EntreArchitect community, our private Facebook group. I'm calling this one Success and Survival as a Small Firm Architect. We use this platform every once in a while to share information with the community. This is not a regular thing that I do with EntreArchitect Live. I've done maybe 5 or 6 of them for all different reasons. I've brought them in to bring in guests to share some information about things, or I've come on and done podcasts in the past, live podcasts. I wanted to organize this special session today in order to make sure everybody's okay. That's really what I wanted to do here. We're a family here at the EntreArchitect community, and as a family, I want to make sure that we're watching out for one another. And so I invited several people here to join me, experts who can help us in many different ways in the areas of business and leadership and life as a small firm architect. And I'm going to start off by asking them each to introduce themselves, just sort of explain who you are, where you're from, what you're doing, and then how people might be able to connect with you, because I'm also going to post the contact information in the Facebook group after the call. So we are here to help you. So if you have any questions at all, post them in the comments below this video here, and we'll get started with this EntreArchitect special session, EntreArchitect Live. Let's start with some intros. Brian, this was actually Brian's idea. He reached out to me and suggested, hey, we should get together with a panel and just sort of be there to answer some questions. And so, Brian, do you want to start off the introductions here?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian McCartney. It is Brian, not Byron. A lot of people get that mixed up because it's spelled a little bit differently. But I am the managing partner and chief idea guy at ArchMark. We focus on architect branding and marketing. I'm based in Estero, Florida. That's on the Gulf Coast, kind of near Naples and Fort Myers, if you're familiar with Southwest Florida. One of our goals as a firm is to we've set a goal in the past year to help 100,000 architects in the next 10 years. And so when I saw that some of our clients were responding with questions about the current situation with coronavirus, I reached out to Mark and I wanted to see if we could have a discussion like this with other people who are helping architects, and just have a good discussion around this and check in with people like Mark said. So I'm happy to be here.
All right, great. Thanks, Brian. Jane.
Oh, Jane Walton. My company is Jane Walton Consulting. I work primarily with the AEC firms across the country. And my focus today will be, I help with strategic planning and executive coaching. I think for today and when I'm working with firms, a lot is communication, especially in work at home situations that we're having. But good communication and thoughtful communication can ease people's fears. Reactive, you haven't thought through the communication can create more anxiety than we're already having. So my focus will be on kind of getting a framework around and a cadence of communication with your any individual that's working for you.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Jane. Mm-hmm. Doug Miller.
Hi, Doug Miller. I'm the CEO of the Brightworks Group. We are an IT operations company based out of Indianapolis that focuses very heavily in the AEC space. Big focus of our work is helping AEC vertical companies understand how to effectively provide the technology tools and the systems to support remote workers, whether those are staff in the field at construction sites or at home. So I'm going to definitely be speaking a lot in the next few weeks around that particular topic of not just the tools. There are a lot of tools out there, but how you actually employ those tools effectively.
Yeah. And I just recorded a podcast with Doug. I think it was on Friday.
Yeah.
And usually I have my podcasts scheduled a few weeks out. Doug's podcast was so timely and important that I pushed it up. It's coming out this Friday. And we talked all about that subject of how to work from home. And it was very interesting. Even this conversation may go in that direction. It's less about the tools, and it's a lot more about everything else in our lives. And so it was a very interesting conversation. So don't miss that this Friday. Mr. Eccles, Jeff Eccles.
Hi, my name is Jeff Eccles. I am in Indianapolis, like Doug. We're not in the same place, but we're very, very close to each other. I am president and chief strategy officer of Echo Engagement and host of the brand new Build Your Brand podcast on EntreArchitect, Gable Media Networks. My focus is really branding, marketing, and business development, very heavily in the AEC world as well. And one of the things that I like to bring up a lot, one of the things I like to focus on, is a Jeff Bezos quote, where he says that your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So one question, when many of you are probably not focused on quote unquote your brand today, the question still remains, what are people saying about you, both your employees, because you have an employer brand, and your clients, potential clients, past clients, current clients. What are they saying about you right now? Because they're saying something. What story are you giving them to tell?
Yeah, super important. Dawn Porta, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dawn, and I am Mark's assistant, and I'm here to help out any way I can for anyone. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Dawn. Lance Psycho.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Thing.
Yes, we hear you.
Awesome. Okay, sorry, I had some technical difficulties. I am the co-founder of F9 Productions, Inc., architecture, real estate development, and construction firm, and also the co-host of Inside the Firm. And so I'm here today. That podcast, as everyone knows, is mainly focused on architects, also expanding to just general entrepreneurs in any kind of facet. And very happy to share whatever I can today. One thing I'd like to talk about at some point would be having videos in order for staff training, because what if you just brought somebody on the week before and they still need some training and they have to be worked remotely? So I think just having that kind of technical savvy is important.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Lance. Thanks for being here. Evelyn Lee, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, can you guys hear me too?
It's very, very low, very quiet.
Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
I would be able to do that. It's not letting me boost it. Hold on. Is that better for everyone?
Oh, much better. Yes.
Okay, yes.
Whatever you
Sorry.
just did was very good.
Took it off automatic. So my name is Evelyn Lee. I am actually a senior experience designer at Slack Technologies. We took our entire workforce remote last Monday in what our CEO is calling an overnight decision, but we have the Slack thread to show that it took a few more days to get there. I also run a website called The Practice of Architecture, looking at how architects can continue to evolve and innovate their business practices and services. So in particular, how do we remain solvent and productive at times like these when our clients are looking to pull out of our traditional line of practice serving building needs. So I'm here to talk about it all. I think relative to remote working is important that this is going to inevitably be a cultural shift for a lot of architecture firms as well. So how do we kind of manage through that, especially since architecture firms aren't typically known for being the most agile when it comes to shifting their culture?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Evelyn. If you first of all, I want to ask the community who's watching, and also, even if this is not a live video for you, because this video is going to be on the Facebook group later after we're finished, it's going to go on as a recording. If you have any questions, post them in the chat, in the comments, whether this is live or not, and we'll make sure that we can get those questions answered. because there will be a lot of people who will watch this later. If there is anyone who has any specific questions at all, post them in the comments, and that we will answer your questions here live. Brian, do you have any questions that people have been asking you that we can sort of start off the conversation?
Yeah, I think one of the key questions that I'm getting is, what should I be doing? How should I be preparing for this? And I think it'd just be helpful, like if each of us went around and, what's one thing that you would counsel architects to do right now to kind of get ahead of the situation?
Yeah, fantastic question. Jane, do you want to start off that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, as I was introduced, a lot of what I'm focused on is communicating and keeping people up to date through this process. And there's an acronym of CAR, like driving your car. And it's what individuals need to definitely calm down, to reduce their anxiety. It's certainty, autonomy, and relatedness. So for example, in certainty, it's, anyone to be able to predict the future, which seems pretty impossible right now. But the way a firm leader can help with that is, communicate often and well. When I say well, really think through, this is kind of where we are now. This is, we're going to be working remotely for this many weeks. And then set an expectation of things that, communication, this is when we're going to be communicating regularly. So people can expect it and they're not waiting. Uncertainty seems to unravel us. Autonomy is really a sense of control over events. So maybe helping people see maybe the choices that they have, when and where they work. So what things are under their control as you're going through these changes. And that might, if we have children that get this and they're at home, can I change my hours a little bit to be able to accommodate, or I've got a parent in a nursing home. So autonomy is anything that you can give them some control over is helpful. And then relatedness, especially when we look at working from home, we are isolated and we feel isolated. So the more you can share goals, encourage regular video meetings, find creative ways for people to be connected, even starting the meetings off with how's everyone doing? What's sort of the status on things? And relatedness may turn into, you can't get out, but I can bring some groceries to you, or I can help out. I can take on this part of the project while you're dealing today with the doctor's visits. So certainty, autonomy, and relatedness, and really the most calming thing for people is to do the work, to get into the work and do the work. So sometimes we want to cancel any extra things that are going on, whether it's training or an initiative or something that we're working on. The more you can not overreact, you may have to change those as your conditions change with clients and projects. But the more you keep things normal and the way things are normally run, the more calm people will be.
Very good. Thank you, Jane. Doug, do you have a response to that question?
Number one, absolutely dead on, right? I mean, the more we can reassure people that the ship is right and continuing to sail forward, the better, right? That level of calmness and predictability is something that's equally important as you're looking at your technologies. So be really careful about thinking about, hey, this is an opportunity to introduce a new tool. Probably the exactly wrong time to think about introducing a new tool. You may have to. We've already dealt this morning with a customer who is moving their board meeting to a remote meeting and they don't have a tool to use it. So they're about to learn how to use Zoom. But avoiding that kind of disruption at the same time you've decided to move everybody remote is really critical. Overall, the more that you can start planning for this before you have to do it, the better. We were actually receiving calls this weekend from not just customers, but friends of friends of ours whose businesses suddenly had to move, decided on Saturday that Monday everybody was going to work remotely, and discovered, hey, we have a bunch of people that don't have PCs. That's not the time, right, to start figuring that out.
Yeah.
So having a plan and not introducing a lot of new things is going to help create that calm and sense of stability. And right now, more than anything else, the business needs stability and predictability.
Yeah, a lot of companies have made that move like in one day. We're closing on Monday. Everybody's going to go home and work from home. So it may be wise for the decision makers, the owners who are making these decisions, to not expect everybody to just jump on and, everything's normal. You're just going to go home and work and you're going to everything. Sort of set that expectation that it's going to take a few days, maybe a week or maybe 2 weeks for this to all be worked out. And so if we set that expectation that we don't expect them to start performing like they were sitting at their desk in the office, that might ease some of the tensions and be able to allow this to be properly executed without. Go ahead, Doug.
And it's an expectation the owners need to have.
Right.
That these things are not going to work. These technologies, as improved as they are today, are going to have issues where people don't know how to use them, where the infrastructure is not in place, or they just fail, right? So being prepared for that and having a realistic expectation of that as an owner is going to do a lot to convey that sense of calmness and predictability and steadiness to your staff as well. Not to mention, it'll keep you as an owner.
Yeah. Jeff, do you want to respond to that question?
Maybe I'll start by just taking off from that same point. It's interesting. I've started, today's the first day, I'm going to do this all week. I started hosting a conversation via Zoom, but promoting it on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, where just a 30-minute conversation at the middle of the day. And what I've already heard is basically opposite ends of the spectrum. There's the end of the spectrum that Doug was just alluding to. Hey, we're going to, and Mark as well. I'm pointing up because Mark's in that corner of my screen, which you guys can't see. We're going to hit the ground running today, and everybody's going to suddenly not miss a beat, even though they've moved home with the dogs and the kids who are home from school, etc. And then the other end of the spectrum, and it astounded me when someone told me this on Friday, I believe it was. They said, well, I guess we won't be doing much business development until about May. As if everything's just going to go into some ethereal limbo for the next couple of months. And neither one of those can happen, right? And so my suggestion, kind of along the line of what Jane was saying, is that communication is really important. When most of you will say some version of 80% of our work comes from repeat clients and referrals, you'd better be talking to your clients. You'd better start developing an empathy for their brand new situation and starting to understand how you can help, maybe in different ways than you ever have before. Almost every single one of you would say, hey, we want to be the trusted advisor. Now's the time. How can you have those conversations? Learn what the new dynamic is for your client and how you can continue to help and even expand the ways that you help. So I think those are some really important aspects. And nothing's going to happen overnight. Nothing's going to wait until May. No matter what happens, we've got to keep moving forward, even if it's just plodding along. So get plugged in and start having those conversations via Zoom, Loom, phone, whatever it is.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Also, I want to remind everybody on Facebook that we're a community and we are family here, and there's a private group. There are lots of really smart people in that chat right now, posting in those comments. you are all welcome to communicate and have that discussion in the comments as well. Answer those questions if you have answers to them. Share your knowledge, support one another, do whatever you need to do. We're going to be here until about 3 p.m. Eastern time, which is a 60-minute call. We're going to share the contact information of everybody on the call that you can connect with them after the call as well. And many of us will be in the comments later on as well. So this is not something that if we run out of time and we don't get to your questions, don't worry, we'll get to the questions eventually. All right, Lance, you want to sort of give your thoughts?
Well, I just have some advice, and I think one thing I felt like we were on the side of the spectrum at F9, and even at CU Boulder, where we teach of being on the side of the spectrum that was fully ready. We could just close shop at any time, and there would be no giant disruption. For teaching at CU Boulder, we already had the tutorial videos because they're sort of coupled with Revit Rocketship and what we do there. And then what we did is we suggested to all of our students is we said, go get Screencast-O-Matic, which is what we use to do all the tutorials inside and outside the firm. And I'm not getting paid by them at all. I just think it's a great piece of software. It's free if you record up to 15 minutes. And then anything beyond that, if you go to their plans, so it's just screencast-o-matic.com. There's a hyphen in between screencast and O and O-Matic. Matic. But if you get the deluxe version, it's only $1.65 a month. And what a rate of return you get on that piece of software, because then I opened up inside of our firm where we just started. We just had a new gal come in about a month ago. She's still being trained, because you can't train everything within the 2 days that we try to. And so there's all these other videos that we have set up. And I went and looked at our folder. One of our project managers, Alex Gresh, has been putting together and continually updating and making new videos. He's sort of the lead person at our firm anymore for kind of training people. And we have over 50 videos in there that are just set up for people that go all the way from the beginning of a project to an end of a project, even how to handle back and forth with the building department, the planning and zoning. So I would encourage everybody to who is ever listening to this or watching this, if they have any kind of training you need to do, if you just kind of have those ready to go at a moment's notice, you'll set yourself up for success. And that information that you recorded never goes away, right? So new people that come into the firm, it just levels the playing field for everybody who comes in, no matter their ability. And I think keeps everybody on the same page, and then helps with their quality control. So that was the one big thing I wanted to share today, because I literally thought about this over the weekend, and Mark and I and Alex were actually texting about it, because I was thinking about how this is going to affect us on Monday. We shut down about half of our firm. They're working from home right now, and thankfully Julia was actually the one who got sick, and she called in and said, I got a fever. I had to stay quarantined for 2 weeks. No problem. Reassured her income's not going away, and then we're still able to continue building her up in the firm from scratch. So having that kind of training, and then even think about how you could maybe use that, recording your screen. If maybe one of your clients couldn't make a Zoom meeting, right? But you could maybe send them a video explaining the design that you came up with for their project and still keep things moving. And then the last thing I would add is I don't know if anybody's building departments have been shut down, but a couple of ours has. And we are, so they stopped doing interior. Boulder County is where we primarily operate, and they stopped doing interior inspections. So I'm actually going to email them later today and see if, because we're supposedly the Silicon Valley of the Midwest, Boulder County is, with Google and Twitter, and we have some of the headquarters here, is like, why aren't you guys allowing us to maybe do FaceTime inspections, or can we record the inspections? There's got to be some kind of workaround so we don't clog up and gum up the economy as it is. So I thought I would just at least add that piece to the mix.
Yeah, I love the idea of the training videos, whether you're doing it to sort of train your staff on a regular basis, or in a time like this where you need to communicate an essential process to a lot of people very quickly. It's using a tool like Screencast-O-Matic or Camtasia to be able to record your screen, go through the process once, and then distribute it to your team. It's a very quick, easy way for you to do that.
We just to tag onto that, we've been doing that for with clients. So we're not architects, but we do design work. We're doing graphic design and web design for our clients. So a lot of our clients have reached out and said we're just too busy to get meetings scheduled. So we've used a tool called Loom at loom.com. They're also free to students and educators, and they've got a sale going on right now. Real great tool. But we've used that to basically walk clients through their web design or their brochure design, record that as a video and send it to them and get feedback, and it works really, really well.
Evelyn, do you want to sort of give some suggestions on what to do right away?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have already touched base on it. I want to take a little bit of a different spin than what Doug threw out there, but
that's why you're here.
Over communication, I think, is really important, but especially empathy in your communication and making communication a two-way street. Slack was hearing a lot from parents and people who are taking care, are just caregivers in general right now. So they made an announcement this weekend as an update that we are no longer required to report sick time until April 15th, and they will continue to evaluate it. And the CEO also came out and said, given everyone's schedules, flexibility is going to be at a premium. So just have conversations about when you can actually work in a productive manner. And if that means earlier in the day, later in the day, if it means on the weekend, just open up those lines of communications with your managers. So I think that's been really important, to have that empathy of what everyone else is going through at this time to make those adjustments. I realize I come from a large tech company that's able to make these type of decisions, but I'm feeling extra taken care of in this time. The other thing is, though, I'm finding that a lot of the smaller firms, like 5 people or less, are being really, really super agile when it comes to adopting new technologies during this time or even prior to that time. So for those companies that, I think it's important to adopt a mindset that things are going to continue to change, that we are going to try some things and be honest with one another. Some mistakes are going to be made along the way, but to continue to have that empathy and to be open to the new working conditions that this type of environment presents, I think is really important. Slack and Teams is free for all those that have 360, and I'm willing to help anybody or any firm that's looking for remote best practices through that. Slack has a freemium version too, right? And we've opened up our lines to take one-on-one communications with potential clients as well as existing clients about how to make that move to the remote workforce. We've seen such a tremendous feedback that right now we're pulling over 200 people who are not a part of our customer experience team to field those calls on an as needed basis. So, there are definitely a lot of people out there trying new tools. And I also emphasize that, it's not going to be one tool that works for your team, right? You need the Revit, you need the drawing capacity, you need Slack and Teams, you need the messaging, you need things like Zoom and GoToMeeting. I think it's also important for designers to figure out whether it's Jamboard or Mural or something else, how do you collaborate creatively together? So I'm actually working on an article for Architect Magazine listing out at least 6 different topics that you might want to try out different softwares around, and talking about, making recommendations to move people's entire desktop systems to their home office if they don't have the laptop set up and stuff like that. So that should hopefully be coming out within the next few days. But that's my big thing. My biggest takeaway is empathy, really, for everyone during this time.
Yeah, that's so important. And I agree with you. That's a big piece of my feeling as well. And I want to get into it in a couple minutes. But Brian, I want to give you an opportunity to answer that question as well.
Yeah, sure. I think the big thing that we're recommending to our clients is to start planning now. Figure out what the key milestones are going to be for making big decisions as we move forward. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, 6 months, however long this takes, there's going to be quite a lot of uncertainty. And if you are not taking steps to kind of plan ahead and understand how you're going to work through those situations, you're just going to add to the uncertainty and the chaos when it hits. So try to figure out, what you're going to do in a situation where it's mandated that you work from home, or that you send employees home. Try to figure out what's gonna happen if you have to go a month without your team together, and how you're going to deal with that. I think that's really important. And just in my experience, and this is not a stereotype statement or anything like that, but just in my experience, a lot of architects, a lot of small firms don't have these kind of contingency plans, or crisis plans, as we would call them in the PR world. And so, getting ahead of that, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and if anybody here on the roundtable have any responses to anything that anybody else is saying, please chime in. Don't hesitate. My thought, and I concur with everybody, and my concern is with you and your personal well-being. Each one of you who are paying attention here and listening to us, I want you to turn off the media. I want you to turn off the television, and I want to turn off the radio, and stop scrolling through Facebook, and focus on the things that you have influence over. Because the more you intake the negative crisis, oh my God, the world is ending, the more stress you're going to incur, and you're going to feel. And at this time, at this moment, you can't feel that way. You need to take control over the things that you have control over, because that's how you're going to be able to get through these times. And just trust me, if the world blows up, you're going to know. Somebody's going to let you know. So you don't need to monitor CNN, and you don't need to monitor the radio. You don't need to flip through Twitter to find what the next big crisis is. We're in a time of crisis. We're in a time of important decisions, and you need to stay, especially as a small firm leader, you need to be able to make those decisions in a way that is not influenced by mass hysteria. This is an important subject, and there's a couple of questions here that I'd like to ask the group here. Stephen posted in Facebook, says at the firm that he works for, doesn't seem to understand the magnitude of the situation. Everyone is still expected to come into the office, and he's frankly nervous going to the office. How should they get the point across to the higher people in the company? If you're in a company that is not, acknowledging the fact that this is a global crisis, and that we do need to work as a community, global community, and make some decisions in order to sort of head this thing off, what does somebody like that do? Somebody that's at a lower level? That's a difficult question to answer, but anybody have any thoughts on how Stephen can respond to that?
Do we know where Stephen is located?
Dallas based.
That's interesting. This conversation that I mentioned earlier, there was someone on that call from Dallas that was saying that it was very much business as usual. And so my question was, business as usual is not happening in Indianapolis or Ohio or Illinois. I mean, things are being mandated down. So I think that's part of it. I think I asked the person on my other call that was saying that, I said, keep me updated, because I want to know as things change and progress, if that stays the same. I don't know that I have a good answer if you're Stephen down here and the call is being made up here, how to push that rock uphill.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you can do is you can ask your leadership what their plan is, just exactly like what I mentioned before. What are you guys going to do if this gets worse? Like, what are the next steps that we have to go through, and how are we going to deal with that so that we can keep the company sustained and flourishing?
And I think adding to that too, I think that's good. It's saying, you know, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of questions around the firm on what we're anticipating and not having a conversation about it, and some sort of idea is creating undue stress, and, you know, letting your next level supervisor, whoever, to kind of take it up, but to say this is not talking about it is not solving or reducing stress and anxiety. We want to have an idea of what's on the mind. You know, when you look at the continuum, it's doing nothing and it's totally freaking out. So the middle part is that, what is the plan? We all are talking, it's taking up a lot of time and energy talking about this because we don't have the answers. How can we calm that down and settle that down? And quite frankly, if the firm leaders still, I mean, that's their option. It's not going to serve them well over long, but that's kind of their way of a little bit of sticking their head in the sand, but also trying to get themselves stable in that. So sometimes it's not in their mind avoiding, but they think they're stabilizing the situation by keeping it normal, and they're not realizing the impact on down the line.
Yeah, there may also be plans happening behind the scenes. Some firms are pretty closed, and there may be them, and their lack of reaction may be their way of trying to keep everybody calm, which in fact it's not, because communication is more important. But they may have a plan, and so what Brian's suggestion of asking them of, you know, what is the plan, may help sort of have that conversation get started. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I would just chime in and say to the employee, don't ever forget this instance in your life. I think write it down, because that was one of the biggest things that we touched on last Friday on last Friday's episode of Inside the Firm. Was when we built our firm, we remembered all the crappy decisions from other business owners, and we vowed that we would never do those sorts of things. And one of those things was having machines ready to go and be able to work from home. Because when I first started down here in Boulder, I had 2 little kids, and it was very stressful, especially when they were sick, not being able to work from home. And a lot of times those people that are entry level are working paycheck to paycheck, or maybe they can skip one paycheck and that's it. And so I know how hard it is to get your feet in the ground. So just, if there's nothing you can do today, then there's nothing you can do today. I mean, obviously you could maybe form a mini union and strike or something like that. I don't know what the backlash would be or not, and I'm not suggesting that, but I think it's a lesson. Just like everybody who made a mistake, it doesn't matter even if you only made one mistake during this crisis, write down that mistake and learn from it.
Yeah, very good advice, Lance. Thank you. Christopher has another question. On behalf of his small company, he's concerned about cash flow, accounts receivable from clients during this time. Then he's worried about the economy impacting the finishing current projects and the creation of future projects. The impact could be light or heavy. I need to see what happens next before moving ahead or on planning or planned hiring. Thanks for this discussion. So any thoughts on money? Cash flow coming in, projects potentially being canceled. What do we do?
Wow, I'm dead. I'll jump in.
I knew Lance would have an answer. Go ahead, Lance.
Okay, one thing Alex and I talked about over the weekend was I looked at our accounts receivable, and we had a very large number that were overdue. And so we have our bookkeeper check in once a month, but now we're going to do a blitz today. I called one of our bigger contracts. I called her today, and I asked her if she could expedite it, but for different reasons. I didn't say like, oh, we're starving or anything like that. So there's only so much you can do, I think, in that respect. If you have ever considered GCing any of your projects, there's actually, I think now is possibly the time to do it. Let's say you're already submitted for permit and they still haven't selected the GC somehow. I don't know. And if you want to take the Class C route and just try to do a small addition, an interior remodel, and jump on that ship. Nick Renard over at Dig Architecture, when I interviewed him at the AIA conference this last summer, that was one of the best pieces of advice that I think I've ever heard, especially from him, was that if you have shovel-ready projects, think about how long that can extend your longevity. Even if you don't want to do it, once push comes to shove, that's literally why we started our firm. Like we had kids to feed, we had ourselves to feed. So at some point, you have to make some of these brave decisions and take that leap. I would consider that kind of route. Then there's also just reinvesting in yourself. I think if you have some extra time now and you can finally learn that new piece of software, maybe it's Revit. We're running a special right now at RevitRocketShip.com. If you type in the promo code HOME50, HOME, the number 50, you get 50% off. You get our template, and hopefully that'll take you to the next level when things pick back up. Then the last thing is, and this is hindsight 2020, but I try to encourage everybody, even my wife, who shares his home office with me. She's a realtor. And I just don't like the idea of not being a W-2 employee, even if you own your own business. So putting yourself on a salary that you can live on, and then saving up all that extra income, and then cutting yourself a bonus at the end of the year and you have a K1, right? You're taking dividends essentially out of your LLC or your S Corp or your C Corp or whatever you have set up. Trying to get to that 3-month cushion is so critical, especially when you start leveraging yourself by taking on employees. That was one of my biggest fears starting the firm, was I never want to lay people off. For me, it was like one of the most devastating things in my life. So that's a hindsight 2020 thing. But if you can, there you go. You know, again, whatever you can learn from this little shock, and I hope it is temporary. I think it will be temporary. You know, you hear the numbers out of like the economic forecast, and they're very encouraging because we just can't meet the needs of housing right now. We're going to be 50% below levels for so long until we figure out either technology, or we start cutting red tape, or we start having flexible urbanism. So it's going to bounce back. Just, you know, that's kind of like the overall advice I would give, but really consider that contractor, or even if, you know, you can do some interior design, any way you can expand your and utilize whatever skills you can grab that you haven't been using for a while to make extra cash, I think is important.
I think that flexibility to, again, going back to understanding the new problems that your clients may have and finding new ways to solve things for them, whether it's dusting off old skills or say, you know, have you ever thought about this? Maybe opening up some avenues there, but then even as down and dirty, and forgive me, I'm probably the only one that's ever suffered from this as a small business person, not staying on top of my invoicing on a regular basis. I know you all invoice all of your invoices on a very regular basis, but double down on that. You know, like Lance said, even checking in more often. But that's to me, that's maybe the easiest way, maybe the only way to get paid on a regular basis is to invoice on a regular basis. Some of you may let that slip. Now's not the time to let that slip. Make sure that you've got all of your ducks in a row, and you know, it may be a 2-week follow-up. It may be something that is more often than typical, but if people are going to be slow in paying, perhaps they may need some encouragement. And the adage of the squeaky wheel,
yeah,
true.
If I could just add on to that, I mean, cash flow is going to be really important to manage because we don't know what's going to happen. And my advice is that wherever possible, that you pre-bill for services. And I know that a lot of people just kind of go, oh, well, I don't know how to do that, or why would I do that, or will clients accept that? I mean, that might just be the only route here, is that if you get paid up front for the services that you're planning to do, then you can deliver those services. But given the uncertainty right now, I mean, that's something I would really talk to my clients about. I'd be very open about, not doing, I'd be very strict about not doing work when you have outstanding invoices that are overdue. That just has to be reality right now. And that's where I would go with that.
I would also, I wouldn't normally be an advocate for debt, but I would look at what just happened with the Fed the last few days and see if there's some way that you can leverage a zero on their board. So that might be something to consider.
Yeah, I'm in my watching news nonstop, driving me crazy. They have had more discussion from national banks and credit card companies and mortgage companies. And so I think it's something to be able to go back to your financial institution and talk about what options are out there. Can you delay payments and just see what's out there now? Certainly there's government assistance that's coming along the way to be able to understand that. Your banks or your accountant's going to know that, hopefully. Be on top of that. But I think that's, what are those financial options that are out there? I'm hearing more and more that there's more flexibility coming our way.
I just put a link in as well. Sorry, Evelyn. Just put a link into the SBA. They have a coronavirus guidance page, and they have announced that they're providing loans and assistance to small businesses. Also, check with your local small business development center. And I'll put a link on how to find that as well.
You should go jump. I think that just goes to us, the panelists. So
yeah, I know. I'm going to ask Don to.
I just posted it in
Perfect. Yeah, no, I mean, so the practice of architecture is really about expanding your business practice. I mean, the truth of that is that it takes time. So, I mean, the biggest lesson learned, I think, from this is plan now for the future. But I do think that this is a really excellent time to begin surveying your staff and kind of understanding their deeper talents beyond what they do on the 9-to-5 basis, and if there's any opportunity to expand services just based on the staff that you already have at hand. I also think it's really key right now to reach out to your current and past clients and be again, show that empathy, show them that, architects always talk about wanting to be a key player in the decision maker for their clients. But in order to do that, we need to show up on a more regular basis. And that means talking to them about things outside of what we're delivering for them. So take the time to have those conversations. I mean, don't slow down on the, and count them towards business development. Don't slow those down at all.
Very good. I would also like to just very quickly expand on Brian's thought about pre-charging, or if you do that, don't do it in an apologetic way. Present it in a way that this is the way that we do business. It's not a response to crisis. It's not, some new experiment. It's the way that this firm does it. If you present it in that way, it's more likely that your client will accept it as business as usual, and they'll accept the fact that, because we have plenty of members inside the membership who bill that way on a regular basis. They bill up front, they get paid, then they do the work, and then they send out another invoice, sort of like a retainer. And so I just wanted to mention that if you do want to experiment with that, don't present it as an experiment.
And I just want to throw in one more thing. Sorry, when it comes to actually testing new software, especially for your sole practitioners out there, and I know you're going to cringe maybe at me, but there's a lot of kind of design, even interior design related platforms where you can show up for your client purely online. So whether or not you've been hesitant to try those out or put your hat in the bucket for those platforms, you might want to even consider trying it out for a week to see if there's anything you can learn from it. But it's, and I can't remember any off the top of my head, so I welcome people who can kind of post that there, but there are, it's essentially virtual interior design services that you guys can look at delivering.
And we've seen customers of ours that have started utilizing some of those in their regular practice. But that's a great suggestion to look at those and maybe use that to begin to spur the whole thought process around how do we do things different. I mean, it's time to just realize we are entering a different world, right? There are going to be long-lasting impacts from this, even if this isn't a thing that stretches much past the end of March. There are real world long-term impacts from this. So use this as a time to think about, should we use that? Maybe we can use it, even if we're not going to use it in the actual, real hardcore design practice. Maybe it's a biz dev tool, right? Maybe we're using it to help show what we can do. Evaluate your business development process. first of all, have a business development process, right? That's probably step one. But step two, evaluate it. Look, in this situation, how do we sell? And should we sell exactly the same things? Or are there, and I think Evelyn sort of pointed to this too, are there different things that, whether it's because of skill an employee has or an interest that we've never really developed, that are different offerings, or can we package them differently, right? Believe me, our business is about 90% recurring revenue. Being a recurring revenue business and looking at a short-term recession is a much, much more comfortable place to be than a project-based business. What can you sell that's recurring revenue?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very, that's a conversation that we have often inside the community, looking for those recurring revenue models. And so that's a great suggestion.
Could I tag on to something he said?
Go ahead, Brian.
One of the things that we know, we've evaluated over 400 architecture firm websites, and one of the things that we know is that most firms don't get found online. A lot of people are going to be looking online as we move away from this, and as we move through it, a lot of people are going to be turning to the internet to find resources. And so this is a really good time. If we do see kind of a downturn here, this is a really good time to tune up your website and make sure that you're getting found, at least in your local area.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody's looking for help in doing that, Brian helps people do that. So
thanks for that.
Yeah, you can, and it's exactly right. I mean, the way that architecture and our profession has been moving for the last 5 years, maybe a decade, it's the way we're being found. And if you don't have a website that works, you're not going to be found. And if you do have a website and you found, and it doesn't get you to the next step, it doesn't get you to a conversation with your potential client, then it's not working. Whether it's it may actually even be a great time to reevaluate what your website looks like and how it works. I have a question that sort of leads from the last question, but Nori has a question about the best way to remotely meet/discuss plans on a project with elderly clients. I've seen this question pop up a couple of times in the group. Easiest software for them to navigate with me to look at a plan together online. They're all pretty computer savvy, but not super skilled. So whether it's an older client or just somebody who's not experienced in sort of some of these technologies, what's the best way for an architect to meet with a potential client without meeting with them in person?
I think we're using one right now.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Well, and in addition to that, and I actually was just taught this recently, Zoom has the capability for you to draw on your screen shares.
Yes.
Which most people don't know about. So if, Zoom, GoToMeeting, I think all of kind of and face-to-face communication is still so important. I've been sending out conference links with video conferencing during this time, and so many people are still just calling in on their phones. Like, just get used to turning on your video camera and getting dressed in the morning. It's probably a good practice anyway. But yeah, sorry to jump in there.
One thing I'd add to that too, just kind of pegging on what you were saying. Zoom has the whiteboard feature. You can also, if you work on a iPad, for example, you can also share that in your Zoom session. And so what I do is I use a tool called Notability. And that actually has all of my templates in it. So I have different, I have agenda templates. I have coaching templates and different things like that. And I can pull those templates up. I can write on Notability, write over those templates, take notes, share diagrams and other concepts with clients really easily that way. So.
All right, great. And my mom, who is the only member in the EntreArchitect community who's not an architect, just posted in the chat. She says FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. she is exactly who we're talking about. So she uses FaceTime all the time to talk to her grandkids and talk to me, and a lot of your clients are doing the same thing, using those tools that are native to their phones. And so maybe focusing on some of those tools that they're already using, maybe asking them what they are comfortable with using to just get them started with the technology, and then maybe introducing them to the next level, maybe sending them a Zoom link and saying, just click the link and let's just have a conversation before we have the meeting, so they can see how easy it is to use Zoom.
That's a good point. And the making sure that you're comfortable with the technology too before you try and use it with somebody else. Don't use something that you don't understand the feature set of. We do see that fairly frequently, right? You know, hey, I've got to have a meeting and I've never used this before, and the meeting is tomorrow. That again is probably not the ideal time to learn it, but make sure you're comfortable with it, and don't be afraid of the consumer side of it right now. FaceTime's a great suggestion, right? I mean, it's not maybe as featureful as something like Zoom, but hey, if it gets the point across, go for it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're trying to eliminate friction. The more friction there is, the less likely it is to ever go forward. It's physics and it's, you know, communication. So FaceTime, if it's someone that has an Apple product, boom, done. Zoom, they can click on a link. You're right. You have to know how to operate it, because all they want to do is click a link. And so it's all about eliminating friction. How can you make it easier? Don't ask them to download apps if they don't have to. You know, any added steps, any added work is just going to add to the friction. So you're going the opposite direction.
Yeah, some great advice. Sean has a question about reassuring his clients, those who are worried about bank loans, retirement funds, et cetera. Will their contractor costs be changing? How do you sort of reassure those people that you are working with to, you know, that things are going to be okay and that we have you covered? Lance, do you have any suggestions on that? And what
sorry, I was on mute. I was going to try.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Lance. Go ahead, Lance. I'll let you. Now Lance is on mute. I can't hear you.
Sorry. I was on mute. There was dogs and stuff in the background. We got everything. You know. Can you repeat that again, Mark? Sorry.
Well, my question is about how do you reassure clients that things are going to be okay when they're worried about their bank loans and their retirement funds, and they're watching their stock market, you know, their stock investments, you know, going in the wrong direction. What do you do to sort of reassure them that things are going to be okay and that they should continue?
Well, somebody else was, I can't remember. I think there was a thread in the EntreArchitect community, I think last week, about this, because I think I had asked in a subthread or something about if anybody had been checking in with their clients yet to see if they're worried about it or not. Yeah, and they thought it was a bad idea because you're showing any kind of some kind of sense of vulnerability or worry or anything like that. That said, there is one client that I did ask, and it's a multifamily project, so similar to the one we just got out of. We sold our last unit the week before the market really started to tank, and I still can't believe how close we avoided the whole thing. My wife was going to put a big house on the market today, on Friday, and then the client decided to pull that off just because of the timing. Just because I think nobody's going to go see open houses right now. That's I think the biggest worry about it. So anyway, back to the client I did reach out to. She actually the next day, I asked her, I said, are you guys still going to move forward with this? And again, it kind of points back to that housing demand. So that's what I've been trying to point people to is, by the time we pull out of this, everybody should be geared up again to easily buy. So if you're still in the permitting process, if you're still in the planning process, I actually can't think of a better time to jump in right now and at least start that process, because by the time it comes out of it, then I think people are going to be ready to do things again. We should be functioning normally again. I think this is a blip on the radar. And then I point them to, and I don't want to downplay the severity of this. We're actually quarantined at our house, not because anybody's sick, because one of our children has some serious lung problems, and we just don't even want to take the chance. But this flu is related to the flu season. So it's spring-ish in Colorado. It's like 50, 60 degrees. The sun is shining. We have our garden planted with cold frames on them. And then I've been trying to reassure people that it's going to get warmer. I mean, April, sometimes we see 70, 80 degree weather. We're going to pull out of this as long as we take the right precautions like we're doing at our house, at our firm, other people are around town. And that they should continue to move forward. I think panic is not the way to go. So that's all I've been doing. And then on the contractor note, since we do contracting too, there's actually, right after I get off this phone call, there's 2 clients I'm going to email and call and say, hey, I know we weren't initially interested in being your contractor, but we are now, just because we want to make sure you're well taken care of, and then we can see your project through to the end. So those are some of the kinds of strategies that I've been using on our end of things. But we haven't had any client panic or pull out at this point. There's one that's has some cold feet right now, and I don't know what that is about. I just think the other architect that we're working with up in Fargo got a little too jumpy and wanted to move really, really fast. We were ready to, but now we're not. So that's kind of that.
Okay. Brian, did you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think now's not the time to be optimistic or pessimistic. It's just the time to be realistic. And I think you want to make sure that you have those communication lines open with your client. I think for ourselves, we're going to be sending out an email today just to say, hey, we are thinking about this. It's a situation that is going to have, it's already begun. There's going to be a middle and there's going to be an end. And we're going to have to take this a step at a time. We can't make predictions. But what we don't want to have is a situation where we are taking extraordinary measures at a time where extraordinary measures aren't warranted. We want to kind of roll with the punches here and just keep those lines of communication open, so that what we're doing to mitigate disruption, and we know where you are in your thinking and how you want to proceed with things.
Excellent. We're right up against our hour here. I want to respect everybody's time because I know everybody's busy both on the panel and outside watching on Facebook. So I wanted to just give everybody an opportunity to say a last word. You're welcome to provide your contact information or share any other information that may be able to help our community in any way. So Brian, do you want to just sign off?
Yeah, sure. Again, my name is Brian McCartney. I'm with ArcMark. We do architecture, marketing, and branding. So here's what I recommend. Connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I share a lot of my helpful tips and information. I will be sharing resources and ideas about how to kind of wade through this process or this situation. A really easy way to find me on LinkedIn is to search for Brilliant Brian. It's BRYON, or you can go to brilliantbrian.com.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Jane?
Yeah, so janewaltonconsulting.com. I've got a free webinar on Wednesday just on communication. It's geared towards work and home, but it will work with folks that are there too. I'll have firms that are international as well as, down to small firms. So it's relevant to everyone. And again, you can find that on my website.
All right, great. And Doug?
Yeah, Doug Miller, Brightworks Group. We're at brightworksgroup.net. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I like Brian, share a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me there. Our real core offering is something called Complete Cloud, which is designed for remote work and to support multiple branches, things like that. We spend a lot of time on this. So if you've got questions about the technology and how to implement it, reach out. Be happy to talk to you about it.
Thanks, Doug. Jeff?
Jeff Eccles, Echo Engagement. Like Brian and Doug, LinkedIn is my favorite platform, I suppose. I am, like I've mentioned before, I'm running a conversation every day at noon Eastern time this week. So if you have questions about how your brand is affected, how your brand can affect your future, jump on. There's no strings attached, no cost. Just send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll send you the link. But it's just sort of open forum conversation, similar to this, but I'm hoping you come with questions and conversation. Also check out the brand new Build Your Brand podcast everywhere where podcasts are found.
Thanks, Jeff. Lance Psycho, take us out of here.
Okay. Lance Psycho, InsideTheFirmPodcast.com. If you haven't heard any of our episodes, you should check them out. We actually have a playlist on SoundCloud. You can start from episode 0, go all the way to 152. We've told our story from 2007. We started in 2009, but we started the podcast in 2017, sort of recapped and told you what it was like for us to start a firm from scratch with no money. I think we each had $1,000 in our pocket. And so anybody can do it. We lay it all bare. I know that's one thing like Mark likes is how transparent we are on the podcast. And at the same time, I would highly encourage anybody who still hasn't jumped into Revit. Now, if you have any extra time right now to retrain yourself, go to RevitRocketShip.com and use the promo code HOME, HOM50. We're letting it go for 50% off right now. And it actually even includes, besides the tutorials, our residential template that we have in our office, which has made all of our workers, all of our employees very, very efficient and our firm very profitable. And I promise you it will make you profitable as well. So thanks for being on today. Happy to share as always, Mark.
Yep, thank you. Evelyn, I didn't forget you, don't worry.
Evelyn Lee from the practice of architecture.com and Slack Technologies. I have put an open offer out on all my social media and LinkedIn channels. Actually, I think LinkedIn is the only place I haven't hit. If there are any firms that are interested in the best practices that we are using to work remotely, I will schedule a call with you. The other thing is I'm gearing up practice of architecture. If for those firms that have made the move to remote, if you are willing to share kind of your announcements, your communications, your temporary workplace policies that you've put into place, please DM me, email me them, send them through the contact form at practiceofarchitecture.com. I'm trying to put together a resource of all those policies by firm size to help support everyone there.
Excellent. Thank you, Evelyn. And I want to thank each of you for spending some time with us here today, but not only here in this call, but every day. Each one of you, and there are many else who are on in Facebook, and there's others out in the profession as well, who every day come to work to help make the world a better place through helping architects be more successful. And each of you do that in your way. And there are many others that I thank as well. I thank you all for doing that, because I believe, and you've heard me say this, that if the architects can thrive, if each individual architect can thrive, the profession thrives. And as the profession thrives, the world becomes a better place, literally, because of the work we do. And so I thank each of you on this call today. And I want to thank Dawn, my assistant, who helps me do everything I do every day, both personally and on my business side. I could not do what I do without Dawn. So thank you, Dawn, for being out there for me and doing to help me do what I do.
You're welcome.
I will post the contact information for everyone in the comments of this Facebook group in a little bit. If you need assistance in any way, post it in the group, on the comments in this post. Private message us, send an email. You can email me, Mark at EntreArchitect.com, and I will get you to the person that you need to get to. We are here to help you. And so I know that there's a lot of people out there who need some assistance, need some questions answered, maybe just need somebody to talk to. Even if you just need somebody to talk to, reach out to me. I'm happy to jump on the line and just have a conversation with you. I want you to know that we're here for you. And as we wrap up, I want to remind you to focus on the things that you have influence over. Stay positive, take care of one another, and remember these 3 things. You hear me say this at the end of every podcast: love, learn, and share, if you just focus on those three things, you're going to make it. You're going to make it through the end of all of this, which I believe what Lance said before is true. I believe that this is just a blip. I think this is going to get, we're all doing what we need to do. I think this is going to recover very quickly. I believe the economy will bounce back very quickly as well. And so stay positive, take care of one another, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for being here. Thank you all for being part of this. We'll talk soon.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Mark.